Greetings, and welcome to another episode of Reparations NOW Podcast. I'm your host, Brother Jumoke Ifetayo. We have an exciting program today. We are going to be unpacking information about the Chattahoochee Brick Company and Convict Leasing and its connection to reparations and how the Reparations Movement is connected to it. And so we have two very profound guests that we have that's going to help us to tell the story and learn more about it. And so, but before we go there, we just always want you to consider liking and sharing and let other people know about the show, leaving comments on the show. We appreciate all of that. Appreciate all of that. And what today, though, before we get into the show, we're going to hear from our sponsor, a message from the sponsor, Reparations United, our visionary Cam Howard, who makes this production possible, and he wants to give us an update on the campaign that he's working on, Earn the Black Vote. All right, Brother Cam Howard, how you doing, man?
Hey, Brother Jumoke, thank you so much, man, for giving me this opportunity to just break into the program like this. Looking forward to hearing from your guest on the topic of today's show. But I wanted to come on because we have some very exciting news I want to share. You know, the Earn the Black Vote campaign has been a campaign we've been operating for about 8 months now, with the sole purpose of getting a reparations commission established by the president via executive order before the election. Many Black voters, as you know, are disappointed with the president, and many are saying exactly what we're saying. He hasn't earned the Black vote. They're not giving the Democrats the vote just on GP. They're tired of the vote being taken for granted. And so we created this campaign, Earn the Black Vote, to first message the president that this is something he has to do to win, and also message Black voters that this is something they can demand because we have the power at this particular time in the Democratic Party. So part of what we did, we organized our messaging campaign in 3 phases. The first phase, we targeted 2,300 of Joe Biden's closest influencers. We use a high-powered artificial intelligence-driven company that had over $100 million invested in artificial intelligence, who were able to pinpoint our messaging to the 2,300 of Joe Biden's closest influencers, either personal, political, or professional. And that was a 30-day campaign. And then we transitioned into phase 2, which was to survey Black voters who were disappointed in Joe Biden. In a national survey, that results would be back out. Those results we should have probably the end of next month, the early June. But we did a quicker survey to infrequent Black voters in Michigan, one of the key swing states. And we're probably going to do it in the other swing states, but we did it in Michigan to determine if both surveys asked the same question. If both Joe Biden was to establish a reparations commission by executive order before the election, are you more likely, less likely, or would there be no change in your preference in voting for him in November? And so what we got in our survey in Michigan was that over 58% of these infrequent Black voters said yes, they would come out and vote for Joe Biden. That equals about 150,000 votes. And if you recall, in 2020, Joe Biden won Michigan only by 154,000 votes. So we're saying that he can get another, and he would more likely get all those 421,000 Blacks who voted for him, and can also get about another 150,000 votes. So we released our news in a press conference, and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, our leader, federal leader in Washington, on the issue of a reparations commission, had some powerful quotes, and we distributed through media. There's a lot of play that we get in the media. Even the right wing has responded in a couple of articles that we saw, not attacking the results of the poll or the poll itself, but our use of reparations as a means of influencing the president at this particular time. And so I would like to just read a few paragraphs of the press release. And you can go to our Earn the Black Vote / poll report / and you can get a copy of the press release yourself. But let me just read a little bit of it. It's entitled Earn the Black Votes Poll Report Shows Favor of President Biden's Executive Order for Reparations. And then it goes on to say, the Earn the Black Vote Collaborative, a leading advocacy group committed to empowering Black voters and advancing racial justice, is pleased to announce the results of its latest poll. The report, titled The Creation of a Reparations Commission, A Path to Victory in Key States, sheds light on the potential electoral impact of President Biden issuing an executive order for a reparations commission. And then it goes down. This is a quote, one of the first quotes by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. This is so brilliant. She says, with the creation of commissions in key states and cities across the nation, the importance of the reparations issue to African Americans and progressive communities cannot credibly be denied anymore. The reality of the horrors of slavery are both visual and documented by extensive word and research, providing support for the glaring monetary analysis conducted by certain state commissions. This is why this poll will be a powerful confirmation of the need for a commission and will help drive the absolute necessity of such a vehicle to be implemented, commented by the Congresswoman. And then she went on to say, this would be a powerful asset for the president's goal of equity. Though we face limitations in Congress, President Biden, through his executive authority, has the power to consolidate and build on the important work completed at state and local levels, contributing a critical federal perspective. The poll report from Earn the Black Vote further demonstrates just how an Executive Order 40, establishing Federal Reparations Commission, would impact the political process in this November election. And here's what's so important. She says, simply put, reparations can drive Black voter turnout to transformative levels. I salute the work of Earn the Black Vote and hope that their message can clarify discussions about the importance of the executive order as we approach the Juneteenth holiday. So she's putting it out there to the president, and no ambiguity. It's clear. You need to do this now. You need to do it before the Juneteenth holiday, and you have the power to do it. We know you have the power to do it, and that if you do it, it can drive Black voter turnout to transformative levels. So she's distributed the press release throughout the White House on Friday, and we are hoping that she will get a face-to-face meeting with the president, and they can talk about a date when he's going to sign this executive order. So, it's fantastic news in the movement. We're pushing the issue, and again, right-wing publications have already wrote their own articles on the report and on our press release. And the Congresswoman stated, anytime the right wing mentions you at all, you're winning. So we're winning. And I just want to report that. Thank you, Brother Jumoke.
Thank you, Cam. Yes, this is an important campaign. We were asking everybody to get behind this. You go to the website, earntheblackvote.net, and you can pull down the messaging to be on point with everybody else, to be in uniformity with everyone else, as well as putting out the article. And also, just wanted to say, Brother Cam, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about the subject matter, convict leasing, today, because I know you have spoken on that, and I know that you also did some work with Norfolk Southern around this issue as well. So I didn't know if you wanted to, while we got you wanted to say any about that.
I'll stick around and listen to your guest, and if I can add something, I'll text you and say, Jim, okay, I'll add it a little bit or something.
Okay.
That'll work, my brother. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Again, Brother Cam is doing some really profound work and has been for some time, leading us in at the national level around reparations and the local level as well. And so now we're going to begin to shift. I think, we're going to do this a little bit different. We're going to bring in a little bit more music just to set the tone for this particular topic. It's interesting. I didn't think about it when we scheduled this date that we're coming up on May Day, which many people don't know is a day is not really honored that much in the United States, but a day that honors the struggle of workers and the gains of workers. It's celebrated internationally May 1st or commemorated internationally. So I just think it's actually interesting, appropriate time that we're having this particular conversation on convict leasing. Let's go ahead and roll with the first song.
Lock 'em up, lock 'em up, KO, lock 'em up, lock 'em up. Let's go. That's the struggle of a man working on the chain. Yeah, yeah. That's the trouble of a man working on the chain. Yeah. Imagine being poor in the South after your freedom. No jobs available, got you begging and pleading. Please come and get you and lock you up for no reason. Re-enslaved, but they called it convict leasing. Manual labor was needed to plant and harvest crops, build highways, railroads. It's time to open shop. Companies paid for labor from the state, which was convicts. It was heartless, in fact. The ones they targeted black. That's the struggle of a man working on the chain. Yeah, yeah. That's the trouble of a man working on the chain. Yeah. Let's go. Convict leasing was really worse than slavery. Why? Because with convict leasing, no one even cared if you died. With slavery, if you passed away, they'll lose their investment. With convict leasing, they'll just replace you when death hits. Ages 14 to 70, they will work heavily, 6 days a week from dusk to dawn. Little food to carry on. Some children as young as 8 years old was enslaved. Working hard with the grown-up strapped to a ball and chain. That's the struggle of a man working on the chain. Yeah, yeah. That's the trouble of a man working on the chain. Yeah. There was an increased need for infrastructure to move goods. Rail system, highways, demand steadily coming. The good roads movement secured federal funding. More shoveling, grading, leveling, digging, they dug in. Enslaved blacks built the wealth for the country again. Farmers could transport crops to the market, and then manufacturers could ship goods across country. Travel easy now. Even today, they still work inmates, giving them pennies. That's the struggle of a man working on the chain. Yeah, yeah. That's the trouble of a man working on the chain. Yeah. Lock 'em up, 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 lock 'em up. That's the struggle of a man working on the chain. Yeah, yeah. That's the trouble of a man working on the chain. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Song that really explains, I think, very well what convict leasing was all about. But we're going to make it more personal and bring it to a specific case called the Chattahoochee Brick Company. And what I know oftentimes with community organizing is always that one person that is fearless, that one person who is persistent and keeps the issue alive and keeps their issue alive. And for the issue of convict leasing, and particularly Chattahoochee Brick Company in Atlanta, that person is Donna Stevens. And so we're very fortunate to have her as a guest. Let her tell us a little bit about herself and how she got connected to the Chattahoochee Brick Company.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm also very, that song just resonates with me. I haven't heard that version, but I've heard the original version by Sam Cooke. And this was, I don't even know what to say now because the song says a great deal of what I wanted to speak about today. My name is Donna Stevens, and I am a native Atlantan, one of the few left, as we say. And
You're a Grady baby?
You know, I'm not a Grady baby. I'm sorry.
I'm a Grady baby. That's what a lot of people always say.
That's one of those tricks, but no, I'm not a Grady baby. Also, I am a graduate of Georgia State University, where I majored in sociology. I am, give or take, 10 years into the environmental justice movement, which led me into the Chattahoochee Brick project. There was a board meeting with Groundwork Atlanta I serve on the board. And the announcement was made that Chattahoochee Brick would become a fuel terminal, if you will. And I didn't know the history of Chattahoochee Brick, but I knew that there was something wrong with the vulnerability of that land and the people surrounding that area. Primarily over 90% are African American, lower to mid-income people. There's also a very heavily industrialized area, and I just didn't want that to happen. But also the sanctity of that land, and knowing that our ancestors had suffered on that land and possibly been buried on that land, really struck home for me. And I knew something had to happen there. So along with other groups that I'm a member of, we were desperately trying to find a solution for that. In Atlanta, we have what you call the NPU, neighborhood planning units, where companies come to get their zoning implemented for their projects. Mm-hmm. And the company, Lincoln Terminal, had to come to our NPU and ask for permission. And they were told no. And they were subsequently told no by the city council. They attempted to get a special use permit, which was not approved. And through all this, we're trying to find solutions, like what can we do? Who can we speak to? This went on for a number of years. Just, as I said, various environmental groups and other entities. And we met, ironically, during COVID was when we built our biggest momentum up, and were able to partner with other groups, the National African American Reparations Commission, and local leaders. And ironically, Doug Blackman, who wrote Slavery by Another Name and also has produced the documentary by the same name, which highlights Chattahoochee Brick Company. And the mayor at the time filed an injunction which caused Norfolk Southern to slow down. Norfolk Southern had partnered with Lincoln Terminal to build this monstrosity. And that was one of the reasons why it slowed down. A year later, we had a new mayor, and he worked with us to get the property purchased through the Conservation Fund, which is a national nonprofit, who purchased the land, and the acquisition occurred through the city shortly afterwards. And now we're I'm proud to say I sit on the board for the visioning and community engagement regarding making this a memorial park for Chattahoochee Brick Company. So I'm very happy about that. So.
Yes. And as you said, there's actually been several attempts over the years, I know, to purchase that property, and each time the community has kind of rose up and was able to stop it. But this time we finally got it at a place now where the city controls. But let's have you unpack a little bit about what the Chattahoochee Brick Company actually was and the significance of it, so people know actually a little more about what we're talking about.
Okay.
Yes.
So the Chattahoochee Brick Company, as we all can, well, not all of us, but some people don't understand, and I use this, my own quote, quite frequently. In America, it seems as if the Civil War ended and Dr. King showed up. There's no middle ground. Sometimes I think that's by design. I don't know, but it says the Reconstruction period didn't occur. And with the Reconstruction period, we saw a rise in African Americans in politically, socially, and whatnot. But there's also that part where the South was very bankrupt. They had no money. It's illustrated in film, especially in Gone with the Wind, where they were just broke. They had nothing. They had no enslaved people. They had no crops. They had no economy. They were just broke. And so they were looking for a reason, a a way to rebuild their wealth because they were used to a certain lifestyle and there were certain things that they wanted to reinvent. So during the enslavement period, they had what they call the slave codes. Well, the southern states reenacted the slave codes and called them the black codes. These were laws specifically targeted towards people of color, black people. If you broke any of those rules, you ended up in jail. And these were as simple as a certain number of black individuals standing on a corner or walking along a train track or not being able to prove you have a job, things of that nature. They would lock you up and they would demand a fee of, say, $50, which in today's world, I'm not sure how much that would be, but that would be a considerable amount of money, especially if you were formerly enslaved and had no wealth. And someone typically called the company man would come by weekly, monthly, and he would say, "How many you got for me today?" And the jailer or justice of the peace or whomever would say, "Well, I got 5 for you." And he'd sign a document and have the enslaved person sign as well, make a mark or whatever, trading essentially the $50 for X amount of work. And they would take these individuals to various camps. They could be turpentine, sugarcane, tobacco, or brick making. And that's where a bulk of the labor, the free labor, came from during this time. And that's how individuals were able to reestablish their wealth. Chattahoochee Brick Company being one of them. Mayor James English, who was the former mayor here in Atlanta, was one of the pivotal people in Chattahoochee Brick. And he eventually bought off all his partners, owning it entirely himself. Chattahoochee Brick sits on the border of the Chattahoochee River, where they were able to harvest the clay. And these people, hundreds, if not thousands of people, men, women, and children, would harvest the clay, mold the clay, kill the clay, and load the clay bricks onto these trains that he owned as well, and send them globally throughout the world, amassing 200,000 bricks a day. Can you imagine making 200,000 bricks a day, working 12 to 16 hours a day with no rest, no decent food, no clothing, no health care, nothing? You just worked essentially until you were no longer use of them, whether you died or you were just disabled. This happened for Chattahoochee Brick was established in 1882, I believe. Convict leasing on the paper ended in 1908 in the state of Georgia. It was replaced with chain gang labor, essentially, which the difference is convict leasing was more of a individual entrepreneurship organ. Chain gang labor was more of a state, local mandated, government mandated form of convict leasing. So we see that this in Atlanta with Chattahoochee Brick Company, but then we have the famous Bellwood Quarry, which is now a park here in Atlanta, where chain gang labor occurred. And then you have mass incarceration with our infamous Cop City rolling out, where you saw that. It's important to note that in all 3 of these forms of imprisonment, none of these individuals are paid. Even today, in mass incarceration in the state of Georgia, you are not paid for your work in jails and prisons. You must work or you are placed in solitary confinement. I cannot stress the importance of the women of Chattahoochee Brick. The men suffered much too. Even though the numbers are smaller for the women that ended up there, they were treated in some of the harshest ways that women could be treated. They suffered illnesses. They were, I'm sorry to say, they were brutally beaten, raped, impregnated, suffered a great deal. The children were used primarily for the size of their hands because they could manipulate things easier than the adult hand could. We have horrible stories of where people were lashed upon for not running fast enough with the bricks to load them. We also have stories where people purposefully, in convict leasing generally, sabotage the work by breaking their own bones or harming themselves to get some type of relief from the work that they had to do. But also the amount of money that was generated through convict leasing is astronomical. James English was a one-term mayor, but he was also the police commissioner, as he and his friends would rotate these roles throughout history, guaranteeing a supply of labor for Chattahoochee brick. He was able to amass fortunes where he was the owner of not one but two railroad companies, as well as two banks. People may be familiar with some of the banks. One of the banks is Wells Fargo, Wachovia Wells Fargo, which still stands today. His estimated wealth was over $200,000 at that time, which today I've been told translates into a Bill Gates wealth tier. He was very influential here in Atlanta. He was part of a group called the Elite 10, which was basically a group of white men who basically ran the city, if you will. They would make decisions and pass them on, and they would become the letter of the law, if you will. He had ties in quite a few things. But before he became mayor, he was also a Confederate soldier. Was also a Ku Klux Klansman. So those things are very disturbing, especially in today's society. There are currently 5 memorials in his name, in his honor, two neighborhoods here in Atlanta. One is the English Avenue neighborhood. One is the English Park neighborhood. There's also a former school referred to as the English Avenue Elementary School, and a park, the English Park Park. And then there is a memorial to him in the Atlantic Station. So a lot of people don't know about it, but he is astounded there. And also he had daughters. So when people don't see the English name, they think that but because he had daughters who married, he also has passed that wealth down through the generations. One of his son-in-laws was the founder of American Express, ironically. And he provided seed money for quite a few other companies that we know and love, Coca-Cola and Georgia Power and others. So those are some of the things that came about during this time.
Thank you. Oops. Thank you for that.
No problem.
I had like 2 or 3 follow-up questions, but as you kept talking, you already answered them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that was perfect. That was great. No apologies. That was just perfect. We're gonna I don't know why I was so moved with this particular show, just to want to bring in some music. So thank you for those compliments on that and what you just now shared. I think several things that you talked about. I think that was important. The wealth that was amassed, how horrific the conditions were, and also for people to really understand that this was a system. This wasn't like an individual person. This was, This was backed up by the system and like you said, the black codes that were put in place, not just in Georgia, but all throughout the South. And, that set this up as a system to extract wealth and extract labor from Black people, from Black bodies as young as 8 years old. And, some of the so-called crimes that they did, talking too loud,
right,
sitting on the sidewalk, not getting off the sidewalk when a white person passed. Just frivolous things. Sometimes they didn't even give them a reason. They just grabbed them and put them, and just arrested them. Just kidnapped them basically. And it didn't even have to make up an excuse sometimes. So people need to really understand that it wasn't like they were, serving their, committed a real crime. I mean, some people I understand, some criminals, actually, may have done some things and were in those camps, but most of them that were there, were there for, were set up to be there.
And there's also the point that some people were given sentences that did not, as we see today, did not really reflect the true nature of the crime. They were very severe and harsh. And one that I'm remembering right now is a young child found a quarter on the railroad tracks and was caught by a white individual and was sentenced to convict leasing.
Wow.
Because they said the quarter belonged to the railroad.
Wow. Yeah.
So those types of, stories may be far and in between, but we don't know really because of course, there was a high illiteracy rate, so there was no way to document these things as well as they probably occurred.
Yeah.
So
we're going to bring in Dr. Melissa. Both of you all are part of the Chattahoochee Break Company Coalition, Descendant Coalition.
Yes.
And but actually, before we do, we're going to hear a little bit more music. I think that fits this conversation. So let's go with track number 2.
I'm excited.
When will we be paid for the work we've done? When will we be paid for the work we've done? We have worked this country from shore to shore. Our women cooked all your food and washed all your clothes. We picked all your cotton and laid the railroad steel. Worked our hands to the bone at your lumber mill. I say, when will we be paid for the work we've done? When will we be paid for the work we've done? We fought in your wars in every land to keep this country free, all for women, children, and men. But anytime we ask for pay alone, that's when everything seemed to turn out wrong. We've been beat up, called names, shot down and stoned. And every time we do right, someone said wrong. When will we be paid for the work we've done? When will we be paid for the work we've done? We have given our sweat and all our tears. We've stumbled through this life for more than 300 years. We've been separated from a language we knew, stripped of our culture. People, you know it's true. Tell me now, when will we be paid for the work we've done? When will we be When will we be paid for the work we've done? Somebody tell me for the work we've done. Will we ever have peace in harmony? I want to know, will we ever, 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 ever be paid?
The Staples Singers, I believe that came out in 1969. There was a lot actually going on in this country around reparations at that time. And so you heard that one, Don?
Yes, I'm adding it to my playlist.
All right. So Brother Cam wants to come back in and share some words as well. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Brother Cam in. And
Thank you, Brother Jumoke. I was just really just shaking my head in agreement with everything you were saying, Sister Donna, as you were talking about that. You know, as you said, the South was rebuilt economically on convict leasing. That's why these southern states do not want us to engage in reparations, because they're the biggest criminals. They owe so much to Black people because their entire economy, again, was built on theft, labor theft after enslavement. But you mentioned Norfolk Southern. I didn't know that Norfolk Southern had a role in the Chattahoochee, in your actions with the Chattahoochee Brick Company. In 2014, here in Chicago, Norfolk Southern Railroad wanted to expand its rail yard. And probably in 2008, they started quietly buying up properties in this area, not saying anything, and then tearing the houses down to a Black community, and began tearing the houses down and making it look like this community was a dilapidated community, like this community was just going down. But they had a 6-year plan of buying these houses, tearing them down. And then it came to the point where we had a slavery disclosure ordinance in Chicago. So they needed 103 lots and houses that the city owned. And so they had to submit their slavery disclosure ordinance. When I found out about it, I began a campaign to get them to pay reparations. And we wanted $26 million. It was a $256 million project. We wanted $6 million, 6%, which would have been $26 million that we were going to go in and put in a land trust and rebuild our communities that way. Well, they balked at it. The city sold them the land, but then they had to have it rezoned, like there in Atlanta. And so we went to the zoning commission meeting. There was a brother on the zoning commission who was a bishop. And I gave this history, get 3 minutes. I just laid out this history of this company, 33,000 shareholders, 33,000 Black residents in the Inglewood community where they wanted to expand their rail yard. Our net worth was less than zero. And their net worth for their 33,000 shareholders was about $300,000 per shareholder. And the bishop gave us a 30-day moratorium, say they had to speak to all the people who were organized against them. There were about 8 organizations. All 8 of those organizations cut and Cobra out of the meeting. The Negroes, boy, I tell you. But anyway, we forced the string sessions. But what happened, what I wanted to share was that when we started our campaign, Norfolk Southern Railroad was an $8 billion corporation. 30 days after the city sold them their land, and after that zoning, they got the zoning. They had to rezone from residential to light manufacturing. Once it was rezoned, 30 days later, their stock went up from $8 billion. It was $77 a share, went up to $114 a share. It added $3 billion to their wealth in 30 days. In 30 days, they were $11 billion corporate. Today, 10 years later, they're a $54 billion corporation. This is the increased wealth that it's multiplying every year that they got off of the enslaved labor of our people. So we can go all the way back to they were enslaved. They were leasing people about 30 years into enslavement and then leased them after enslavement. So we can go all the way back to 1830s with this company and show how they have been increasing their wealth on the backs of Black people, even today, unstopped. I just want to share that.
Well,
thank you, Ken.
I think I might have left something out as well. The Lincoln Energy originally purchased the land, and when they didn't get what they wanted, years later, they sat on the property for a few years. And then all of a sudden, a local community member, a friend of mine, alerted me that Norfolk Southern had entered a lease agreement with Lincoln Energy, identical to the plans that Lincoln Energy had. It was a 99-year lease agreement. In addition, they had only purchased half of what Chattahoochee Brick's property was. They went ahead and purchased the remaining property, all 77 acres of this land. And what we were like, why would Norfolk Southern want to purchase a fuel terminal? Why would they want to build a fuel terminal? And it was just really complex. And I don't think they understood what was going on at the time, because Norfolk Southern had just moved their headquarters to Atlanta. And they had already caught some bad press regarding that move, because they were doing some things that were not neighbor friendly. And so those types of things. And again, this was during COVID 2020, 2021. So the city was on lockdown. As you all know, it was very hard to talk to people, period, to get their information. Offices were closed, emails were full, voice messages were full. These were just very complicated. The 2020 year was very complicated because we found out about Norfolk Southern's involvement on the heels of the pandemic starting. And so we couldn't really communicate with them. And then when we could, it was very complicated situation.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that I didn't know that they were involved, because I could have brought some of our information and could continue in some of the work that we had done with them, and brought them closer to the negotiating table. But you all are doing some great work. You got the land, and so I applaud you so much.
Yeah. Well, the city has the land. I'm just glad that we were able to influence them to make that purchase.
All right. Let me bring in Dr. Melissa, who's been very patient with us. And,
you know what, Jumoke, I thank you for having me on. But between the song and Donna,
You just enjoying it, huh?
You have a role to play. You are an educator and an activist, and I know that you help Donna. I was watching the video at the sacred ceremony, and I saw you whispering in her ear, and I know that means you behind the scenes.
Oh yes, she was very, very, very important part of that. Yeah. Very important.
So as a with an emphasis, I know in your background in education. So let's talk about like what we need to do to make this story more known to our people, and why is that even important to do that?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it is very important because of everything that's said. It's a continuation of enslavement. I think that every child, if we're just talking about the context of Atlanta, most of the inner city children have some connection with the prison and the prison industrial system, or even the injustice system. So they're knowledgeable about that. And this, kind of understanding and knowing about the history of convict lease and the history of convict labor and chain gangs, knowing the difference of those and the prevalence of them, how those are just different ways of reenacting enslavement. That's important to know. There are economic lessons about how Norfolk Southern has increased in wealth exponentially over time. There are lessons about, community, about some revolution, some rebellion, because Donna, you did mention like how the those that were incarcerated, they would break their
Yeah.
wrists or break their ankles.
Yeah.
So I mean that's rebellion. So it is very important for us to continue to raise awareness, for it to be taught, I think, in schools, because of all of the harms that have been done. We can probably trace back in our own families where, someone just went missing, someone left and just went missing. Some of those letters that mothers and sisters and daughters wrote to the legislature and to the president, looking for their husbands and fathers and brothers and people in their community, are just heart-wrenching, and actually understanding that that convict leasing and all these are institutions and systems that are still prevalent today. It takes some of that shame off of the shoulders of Black people. It kind of helps a little bit for us to not blame ourselves, which is part of the system, the way that the system works. It stays invisible, but it makes it more visible, that this is something that was done to us, and not as if we were complicit with it, but it was done to us. And how is it still being done today? It's very important for us to understand the different ways that this this is some ideology of white supremacy and racism that's still coming into play. So we as adults need to understand, and children, of course, need to understand. They need to understand the entire picture so that they can dream and create something different, so that we can all be free.
Yes. Well said. Yes.
So
thank you. So where are we now? And either one of y'all can add to this, answer this question in terms of, like, I know you mentioned, I believe, Donna, just in terms of the vision. I know that where the Chattahoochee Brick sits is a very some environmental concerns, right? Because it's near the river, it's right near the river, and where Proctor Creek meets the Chattahoochee. But also, I understand, so there's been some plans to do like some green space and a memorial and things like that. So what and also, what can people do to support this
excuse me, if we could just, I'm sorry to butt in, but if we can just clarify that we're talking about preserving the heritage. We're talking about preserving this site for specific reasons, which Donna's going to get into. But we're at the same time, we're not like excusing, like there were some people that were there because they did commit crimes. That's white and Black. So it wasn't just, it was predominantly disproportionately Black, but not all Black. There were some white people that were there. We assumed that they committed crimes as well, but everyone, because these laws were so draconian and so oppressive, then of course it's going to unduly affect, disproportionately affect Black people. But we're not excusing crimes. We are, regardless of the crime, the level of horror and terrorism and atrocity,
the barbaric treatment.
Yes, that the fact that they were whipping, they had a whipping post that they would whip men, women, and children, and their cries could be heard a mile away. That still gives me shivers. That level of barbaric behavior is not called for under any conditions. I just wanted to make sure that I said that, because there was a comment about people that are in jail. I mean, apparently that person hadn't seen Shawshank Redemption. Everyone's innocent, but
no.
Just
and thank you for clarifying that, Melissa, because a lot of people, they want to say, oh, even now, people, well, they must have done something wrong, they arrested them. People assume so many things about incarcerated individuals, or what led them to where they are. We have broken families, as they quote unquote like to say. We have broken education systems. We have a broken economic system, and we see it getting wider and wider every day. The rich keep getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer. Even the middle class is suffering, and during this economic time, you have to decide whether you're going to buy groceries or gas to get to work. I mean, these things are just multiplying as we speak. So there are those things, but also the just the pure nature of convict leasing. The site sits on what they call a tank farm, which is basically these gas silos that take up city blocks individually, full of gas from various companies, Exxon, Amoco, Quick Trip. You see these tankers go in and out 24/7, fueling up with gas to take to various gas stations throughout the South, primarily the Atlanta area, Georgia. And then you have if you spend 30 minutes on that property on the exit of Chattahoochee, you will see the dynamics of the environmental issues going on. You have the Norfolk Southern train track on one border of the property, and it comes in and out. There's no schedule. People always ask me, well, when does it stop? Because the minute I start speaking is when the train will come through, blowing its horn and making loud noises. And that train can go on for a number of minutes. Then, of course, you have Proctor Creek and the Chattahoochee River, which are compromised waterways nationally ranked. You also have the air pollution that goes on there. You have less than a mile away, you have this county airport, as well as dozens and dozens of diesel trucks from Fortune 500 companies in the Atlanta Industrial Park, which is less than a mile away. Then you have a street famously called Fulton Industrial Boulevard that starts at the corner of the English Park and runs almost to Palmetto, Georgia, that brings in warehouses all over the place, from UPS to FedEx to you name a company, they have a warehouse along that strip. And then you have 285 and I-20, need I say more, in the Atlanta area. Most people know what that means. We have bumper-to-bumper traffic a good portion of the day. So we have all these environmental concerns. Oh, and I forgot, least but not least, there's a landfill not too far from there. The city was able to get an EPA brownfields grant, $2 million last year, for a cleanup effort for the property. We can't do anything until that property is cleaned up. Mm-hmm. And that's going to take years to do because of the nature of that land and because of the way it's been treated in the past. So the visioning for that property is, we have a while to think about it, but the RFP is active right now for people who want to work on that project. But we also have, people have said to me, well, what do you want to see in the past? And I've been reluctant to say that because I know that with the brownfields cleanup, there's only certain levels of occupation that you can have with certain levels of brownfield cleanup. So if you have certain areas, you won't be able to put a playground. There are also 2 floodplains in that property, and it's quote unquote, allegedly rumored, more than likely, 2 cemeteries exist on that property. Mm-hmm. We don't know where they are because Lincoln Terminal said they did a ground penetrating radar study, as well as Norfolk Southern. And they both claimed that they did not find any evidence of that. I have not seen those documents. And on 77 acres, I doubt they did every inch of that property. Mm-hmm. But even if they didn't, we know that historically people died on this property. And what did you do with the bodies? We have been, again, it's been documented that those bodies were thrown into the Kills or into the Chattahoochee River. but it still does not negate the fact that people died there.
Right.
And that needs to be acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be acknowledged for anything else. And again, the nature of the crimes, over my lifetime, I've always questioned why did people end up in jail. And now I'm very nonchalant about it. I'm like, I don't care if you went to jail or not. I mean, unless you did something horrific, like lifetime movie, true crimes kind of thing, I'm pretty lenient when people tell me they've committed a crime, because as we see historically, crime is subjective. It's very subjective. And we also see where police have been involved in a number of scandals where they planted drugs on individuals, or they've done authorized crime stops, barged into the wrong home and shot people up for no reason. There are all these things going on, harassing people, stop and frisk, all these things that primarily occur in Black of color
communities.
communities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Continuation of the Black codes.
Right.
So there's a straight line from the first time that they entered on the African continent and began kidnapping us, all the way up through to this conversation we have now in terms of taking our bodies. And the big crime that they committed. Queen Mother Moore said, "We ain't commit no crime." She said, "It's inside of prison. You didn't do no crime. Did you still hold people's cultures and languages?" And she said, "You ain't commit no crimes." But anyway, we will have to bring this episode to a close. It's been very delightful. Maybe Dr. Melissa said maybe we need to do a part 2. But the importance is that we want to remember that this is all a part of the reparatory justice, all a part of the reparations, all a part of the healing and repair that we have to do as a people. It is grounded in space, it's grounded in community, it's grounded in our ancestors and what they've gone through, and it's grounded also in us and in our children and those yet unborn. And so, the idea is that whatever we've done to bring about a little bit more justice, a little bit more healing, a little more prosperity, a little more African space and knowledge so that they can create a better future. And it's on us to do what we can do to make that happen. So I want to definitely also thank you both. Thank you, Donna Stevens, for
thank you
your work that you do. Thank you, Dr. Melissa, for the work that you do. Thank Brother Cam. Recognize my engineer, Brother Major, as we close out this episode of Reparations Now podcast. Like, share, subscribe, share with someone. Reparations now, reparations now, reparations now.